ISIL is an organization, as an organization, is likely to evolve strategically, morphing, rebranding, and associating with other terrorist groups, while continuing to threaten the United States and our allies. Second, the proposed AOMF wisely does not include any geographical restriction, because ISIL already shows signs of metastasizing outside of Syria and Iraq.
So that was moments ago, Secretary of Defense Ash Carter, that ISIS is spreading and growing more dangerous. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee, with me now out of D.C. And Senator, good morning to you as that hearing continues. First,
good morning.
Draw a distinction for us between the point that Carter's making now about ISIS growing in influence and a story this morning in the New York Times suggesting that ISIS is actually being driven out of certain parts of Iraq. Is it possible that it's both right now?
Well, absolutely. They are the majority of the forces in Syria, but the efforts in Tikrit seem to be paying off. But the problem is this is a Shia-led operation against a Sunni stronghold in Iraq, and there is no ground force being formed in Syria. So even if you take Tikrit and Mosul back, it's going to be hard to hold it unless you go into Syria. That's where they reside in the largest numbers, and there is no plan to go into Syria.
Yeah, a moment ago during the commercial break, I don't know if you heard it, but Senator Marco Rubio was questioning Secretary Kerry. And the point that Rubio was making is that he believes that these Iran negotiations are dictating decisions on the military side.
Definitely.
And that is something Secretary Kerry vehemently disagreed with. If we get a moment, we'll cue it up and play it for our viewers. What is your view on that?
Well, I think it's absolutely certain that our desire to get a deal with Iran, no matter what, this obsession with a deal with Iran, has affected the policy against ISIL. There is no Arab army in the region going to go into Syria unless we also focus on Assad. To defeat ISIL in Syria and leave Assad in power is turning Iran over to Syria. The Iranians, as we negotiate regarding their nuclear ambitions, have toppled 4 capitals. Yemen, they control Lebanon through Hezbollah. Assad's a puppet, and the Shia militia on the ground doing the fighting are controlled by Iran. So no Sunni Arab group is going to help us defeat ISIL in Syria unless we turn on Assad. And the president has told the Ayatollah in a letter that he's not going after Assad.
You signed a letter as well that I'll get to in a moment. First, Secretary Kerry, on what I just was referring to here.
It's really almost insulting that the presumption here is that we're going to negotiate something that allows them to get a nuclear weapon.
Well, I haven't discussed about the nuclear weapon, but I've discussed, and I'm not saying there's a grand bargain. What I'm saying is that I believe that our military strategy towards ISIS is influenced by our desire not to cross red lines that the Iranians have about U.S. military presence in the region.
Absolutely not in the least.
Okay.
There's no consideration whatsoever as to how they or anybody else, we will do what is necessary in conjunction with our coalition.
Now, with regard to Iran and the letter, Tehran has already called this.
Can I just comment on that for a second?
You can, quickly, yes.
John Kerry doesn't know what he's talking about. The only reason we can't get an Arab army to go with us into Syria, they have conditioned going into Syria on dealing with Assad. Turkey has said, we want a no-fly zone before we go in, and you have to promise us that you're going to get rid of Assad because Iran will run Syria. And the reason we're leaving Assad alone is we don't want to upset Iran during these negotiations. So John Kerry is flat wrong.
And Sisi, the president of Egypt, said a similar thing, right?
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
He said you need a Sunni army that would be contributed to on behalf of the Egyptians and the Jordanians and the Saudis.
Barack Obama is willing to give Syria to Iran by keeping Assad in power. No Arab is going to be willing to do that. So ISIL in Syria is never going to be defeated by an Arab army unless we also go after Assad. And ISIL is moving to Libya and other ungoverned spaces as we fight them in Iraq.
Yeah, we'll bring a map up here in a moment to help folks follow this along because you really need it. On Iran and the letter that you signed along with Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, Tehran called it a propaganda ploy. Well, why was it necessary to write and send such a letter?
Great question. I've been working on bipartisan legislation with Senator Corker, Menendez, and others that says Congress will not agree to lift the sanctions that we created unless we look at the deal and vote as to whether or not we want them lifted. The President of the United States does not have the authority, in my view, to tell the Congress that we cannot look at a deal that would lead to the lifting of the sanctions that we created. I did not sign the letter until the President threatened to veto the bipartisan legislation I just described. The moment that he told the Congress basically to go to hell, I wanted him, the Iranians, and the world to know you cannot deal us out. So if he's contemplating a deal with the Iranians that would give congressional sanction relief and not allow us to have a say, he's flat wrong, and that's why I signed the letter.
You heard Hillary Clinton yesterday. She says you either want to help Iran or hurt the commander-in-chief.
How about this? How about this, Secretary Clinton? We want to stand up for the idea that sanctions created by the Congress cannot be relieved by the commander-in-chief unless we agree. The only thing in this legislation deals with the lifting of congressional sanctions. And to Secretary Clinton, if you were president, would you deal Congress out? Would you threaten to veto a bill that's bipartisan, requiring Congress to review your deal before Congress agreed to lift the sanctions they created? This is a very big deal. There's only one commander-in-chief, but we're the Congress. We created these sanctions bill. We should have a say. And by the way, the Congress, the Senate, hasn't toppled 4 Arab capitals. We're not building ICBMs, and we're not the largest state sponsor of terrorism. It is Iran, and we haven't been lying about our nuclear ambitions for the last 20 years. So this is really a challenge to the Congress's authority to deal with things that we created. This is not an imperial presidency as much as he would like.
Thank you, Senator. Lindsey Graham, South Carolina Republican, with us from the Hill. The hearing continues. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.